MOA is finally over. It's season 2 of your Blocking the TV.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's season 2 of your Blocking the TV. Josh Creekmore, Alex Pacheco. We're connecting from Portland to Denver. And we have taken some time to kind of reevaluate. And of course, unfortunately, we missed a lot of really important stuff. We didn't get a chance to talk to you about who you should draft in your fantasy drafts going into the NFL season, who is all hype for college football and who is real, blah, blah, blah. The reality is this, though. I think if we had given you advice on who to draft in your fantasy drafts this year, you would be worse off than you are right now, hopefully. So anyway, so wanted to introduce a new premise for season 2. We are going to be getting more of a focus on actual podcasting, and we want to really define every show. And so what we're going to do is each of us, Alex and I, have prepared 3 questions for the other, and we will ask those questions to each other, and we will discuss. And week to week, it could be a lot of variety, but knowing the questions that I have for Alex today, I think that we're going to have some fun. So, Alex, are we ready?
I'm ready. It feels like we're sitting down on a bar stool back in Sioux City, chopping sports up, which is what we want.
Back in Sioux City, Iowa, Morningside College, now Morningside University, our alma mater, the place where we learned all of our chops that we then, hung up and abandoned for years, and then now have come back to in some form because, of course, everybody has a podcast anymore. I mean, like, how many people on your street have a podcast? You probably at least know one. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Telling people about the podcast, I have 5 more podcasts to listen to. So it's just
it's cool that you bring that up because you should actually check out my podcast. It's you're really gonna love it.
You're gonna love this. I now listen to a board game podcast. It is a podcast all about the latest and greatest board game to play with your family.
Interesting. So there's actually a Morningside alum and friend of mine from back in my Morningside days, prior to even when we crossed paths for the first time, who I don't know if she still does, but she had a program called Board Game Blitz, I think was something that she was doing. I think she's still doing it, but anyway, yeah. So that's is kind of a niche thing, but there are people that are into that stuff. So in any case, who wants to start? You want to start with your question? We'll go in a rotation. So you ask a question, I ask a question.
I think very timely, and something that's come up is you look at MLB contenders this year, Josh, and it's been kind of a boring season, for lack of a better term. Logged in, keeping up with standings. Obviously, Rockies eliminated quite some time ago. They're not going to set the record for most losses in a season, so I've been checked out for baseball for a hot minute. But seeing the updates and the scores and the standings, logged in and saw it's pretty much locked up. For the first time that I can remember, with the difference being, are you going to get a home game? Or are you going to get out of the wild card round? But the top teams have been solidified for what feels like quite some time. So would love to hear, how does a team or how does a fan base get behind and preparing for a 3-game wild card series when everything's for the most part been pretty locked up and pretty standard going into the postseason?
Well, I mean, number one, I would say, yes, I agree that the top teams have been pretty well established, although there's been some jostling back and forth as far as division titles are concerned with those top teams. Because, of course, if you look at the standings right now, as I pull them up, you look at the American League East, and the Blue Jays have sort of established themselves. They've got a 5-game lead there. You look at the AL Central, and it's been the Tigers for a while, and they've had some ups and downs, and there was a point where the Guardians and Royals maybe threatened to catch them, but then before they really lost their hold on the division, they were able to kind of right the ship. And so, Tigers have a 6.5 game lead. I don't think anybody thinks that those 2 divisions are in contention at this point, but if you look at the American League West, the Mariners and Astros are definitely jostling back and forth for position. Only a half game separating those 2 teams. The Astros had the lead for a while there. They just lost it to the Mariners. So, but when you're talking about jostling like that, if you don't win the division and you're that close to winning the division, in most cases, especially since they expanded the wild card to 3 teams, you're going to be in the playoffs if you're that close. And so, yes, divisionally, it's pretty well locked up. Wild card wise, though, there's still 3 teams in each division that are out, that are within striking distance, even with a handful of games left. And so it's fun right now, and I think this is what the wild card expansion has created. Is there is more action, I think, consistently at the tail end of the season, where there's at least a couple teams that are currently out of the playoffs that are within striking distance, and that makes it exciting. My team, in particular, the Cleveland Guardians, they have really put together a nice little stretch. They're 9-1 over their last 10. They are 3 games out of a wild card spot right now. They either need, they just really need to take care of business and keep taking care of business and hope that one of the teams ahead of them, chiefly either the Mariners or Astros, depending on who wins that AL West, is going to start losing some games and maybe give them an opportunity. But, when you're looking at it and you know that your team, if they take care of business, they've at least got a shot. It feels like playoff baseball already for me. And that is exciting. And if the Guardians don't make the playoffs, and there's a very good chance they won't, because it's not just about them winning. They need somebody else to lose. It's still fun. This is still going to be a memorable year for me. They're still better, frankly, than they should be. Their rotation has been much improved from what we would have expected. You lose Emmanuel Clase due to the betting scandal. You lose Luis Ortiz, who was solidly like your number 2 or number 3 guy in the rotation, and a guy that you added in free agency. And you're still able to recover. And I mean, they're starting pitching over the last 10 games or so has been lights out. I think they have an ERA around 1.5. That's just unbelievable for a bunch of. I mean, Tanner Bybee was the only guy out of that group that I think we had much expectation of, and so it's crazy. But so I digress. Talking about the 3-game playoff, the thing that is interesting is, and this is different from the standard playoff series in Major League Baseball. Home field advantage goes to the team that is ahead or the higher seeded team for the entire thing. There's not 1 away game and 2 home games. It's 3 home games. So number 1, if you can lock up that home series, that's huge. But number 2 is, I mean, you can't, to me, you have to sweep it. You have to go in there with the plan. We're going to try to win these first 2 games.
Sure.
Because we don't want to be in a game 3 situation where there's a question mark on who is our starting pitcher. Where, I mean, we don't have our top guy going or our number 2 guy going, because it leaves too much to chance. And that's the thing with a 3-game series is a team can get hot, come out and shock you in game 1, and then you're reeling the rest of the series. And that's how you see these higher seeded teams go down.
Well, and even setting up your rotation for the next series as well, it can throw everything into the mix. Want to piggyback off that as well. As scary as that wild card round is, you have some juicy divisional matchups if the playoffs were to start today. How many of those teams? I mean, it's fun for a fan and for us to sit back and say, hey, throw some games, play some of those younger kids down the stretch. Let's get into that wild card series. How much you really think that teams are thinking about their playoff position, or are they just going out and winning games?
Well, I mean, there's, I think, a delicate balance there. You want to stay fresh. We've seen in recent years, since the expansion, the higher seeded teams that get a bye through the wild card round, right? They have not fared all that well. And in year 1, they all got eliminated, right? So I think you want to try to stay fresh. You also want to make sure that you manage your freshness with rest. And so I think if you have a playoff spot locked up and you've got a home field advantage locked up, you really are just you want to get guys reps but you're not like, hey, if we're playing an extra innings game, we're going to leave our stars in for all 10 or 11 innings. You're just not going to do it. You're going to get guys off their feet, but again, continue to let them get some reps, maybe rotate the DH a little bit. And then when you look at starting pitching, you want your bullpen to be fresh. So, but at the same time, you want your number one and number two, especially guys in the rotation, to be ready to go. And beyond that, when you're talking about your actual 3-game wild card series, are you thinking about, well, we need to just try to win this series? Or are we thinking we need to win this series and be prepared to be competitive in the divisional series? And I think that can be a delicate thing to balance as well, because you can go all in on the wild card series, win it, and then you are at a major disadvantage against that higher seeded team coming off of a bye. And so there's just a lot to consider, and major league managers and front office guys are, to me, the good ones are so underappreciated, because the amount of 40 chess that they're playing when it comes to this, and the amount that is riding, especially when you're talking about a season as long as the Major League Baseball season, and it comes down to a 3-game wild card series to decide whether or not you get to go for the big one. It's tough. There's just so much on the line. There's so much tension and so much to think about. And
I think that's always driven me crazy. And sorry that this has been so long-winded, but this is what we'd be doing on up at the bar stools and getting down after it. What do you feel about a 3-game series, a best of 5, a best of 7, and then finally another best of 7? The 3-5-7-7. It's one of the reasons why I'm such a hockey fanatic. Is it's a gauntlet. You can have the 8 seed beat the 1, but then they need to prove over another 7-game series that they're the better club. I don't know if I agree with such a long baseball season coming down to your first 2 matchups, or your first matchup if you make it straight to the divisional, being a 3 and a 5-game set. Why not 7?
Yeah, honestly, what I would go to before I would do that is I would say, if you win your division, I would say win your division, and then the number 1 wild card team, you're just in, right? You're into the divisional series, and then we have to figure out a way to, or rather, reduce it to 2 wild card teams. You take the division winners, they all get buys through the wild card round. And then instead of it, because we've had this as well previously, we had the 1 wild card playoff game, right? I think going back to that 1 wild card playoff, but with a 3-game series, to me, that makes more sense than trying to extend all of the series further out. I think you really should reward the teams that win their division.
Sure.
And I think that forcing them to have, a best of 3 series decide the rest of their season if they're not a number 1 seed is tough. And I think they may move on from that at some point. But also, it is a gauntlet, and playing a 5 and a 5 and a 7 and a 7 would make just as much sense to me. And I do think, though, that they're working through things and how to make this work, and they're kind of testing it out over the period of a couple of years each time, and eventually they're going to get it right. But there's a lot of things that can change in Major League Baseball that can throw a wrench into that, and so we'll see how it goes in future years. But right now, with the way things are coming down to the end, especially in the wild card in both leagues, it's exciting, and I'm excited for the wild card series, and I think it's going to be a fun playoffs for Major League Baseball this year.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll touch on MLB on question 2 in a little bit, but appreciate it.
So, question that I have for you as a Denver fan, and I didn't watch the whole game, but I was keeping tabs on it. But the Broncos this weekend had a tough one, so they come down to the end. Kicker for the Colts has a long bomb to make to try to win it. You guys were up by 1, I believe, right?
Up 2.
Up 2 points.
So, yep.
2 points. Field goal wins it. And he comes in, kicks this long field goal, misses it, and then there's a penalty. And anytime we have a penalty on on a final play or, somewhere in there, it's always questionable. But the penalty is leverage, and a guy for Denver tried to jump over the line and block the kick and blah, blah, blah. So they get to re-kick and they make it. And so you guys lose. What was your take on that overall, how that played out, and how did you feel as a fan?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that first and then kind of go into a little tirade on just the emphasis on tough plays being made by officials in real time by ungodly athletes that can make moves quicker in a fraction of a second than I can if there was a fire lit underneath my seat. Just in terms of making split-second decisions, even the calls at first base, man, I think those umpires and the ones calling balls and strikes, they deserve a lot more credit than they get. Now, I'm never going to defend Angel Hernandez. I'm going off topic here.
Can't do it.
At the end of the day, when you look at a leverage penalty, I always knew that, like, hey, you can't use somebody else to launch yourself. You can't jump on somebody else's back. You can't have a bunch of people giving piggyback rides and trying to knock a football down. I get it. I understand it. My first inclination when I saw the penalty was he fell over the guy. He jumped. He's doing everything he can to block this football. Probably launched himself a half inch forward and fell over the guy. Did it impact the play? Probably not. The kicker's, his head's down. He's not looking for hands. If the kicker can look up and point a football through a bevy of hands up in the air, then more credit to him. But it didn't impact the play. And too much in sports, and as an athlete myself playing high-level co-ed soccer, Division III soccer here in Castle Rock with my Castle Rock brethren, is that officials feel like they have to make a call. They feel like that's part of their job, and in their responsibilities, we have to make a call. We have to be a part of the play. And too often as athletes, we want them as far removed while still holding the letter of the law and being able to interpret it in the right way. So my biggest issue was it had zero impact on the play. It'd be like if we were to call a sideline violation on NFL teams or college teams, you could probably call it on every single play. The way that they're hovering around the green, they're hopping on the green, they're running out to their teammates. You could realistically throw a flag every single time. If you wanted to call it by the letter of the law, they're not in the coaching box, they're doing this wrong. So I always go back to the impact. Was the spirit of the law was that you don't jump on someone's back and launch yourself. The guy didn't do that. Now, the other flip side of the coin is no one here in Denver, after the first, let's say 30 minutes of the game, when everyone calmed down and looked at the rule, you go back, our guy hit the post on a field goal with about 2.5 minutes to go. We threw a pick late in the fourth quarter. Our run game was atrocious. We couldn't stop a nosebleed. Our all-pro Patrick Surtain was lit up on the field all day long, gave up the most catches against him that he's seen in his young career. So I think that's a big thing for a team that wants Super Bowl aspirations. They're not going to come down to one kick. Being that we are dads, this weekend I had a soccer match with my competitive team. We outshot this team 35-1. We did not score a goal on our 35 shots. They went 1 for 1. They scored a goal on their one shot. And I had one of my girls say at the end of the game, "Hey, Coach Alex, but they only took one shot and they scored on it. Like, we should be proud of how many shots we put on goal." And I said, I agree with you, but we should have never have been in that position to where one shot dictated the game with 2 minutes left in the match. And we gave it all back with one free kick, one silly foul. And my player again, that wasn't a foul. That ref made a bad call. Well, that one ref's bad call didn't determine the game. Our 35 missed shots before that skewed the game. So as frustrated as I am that it was an impact call based off a play that made no impact, didn't change, was a missed field goal. They kicked it from 60. Like, our defense did their job at the end. You have to know that, hey, is jumping up in the air from 60, are you really, of course, in the back of my mind, it's going to be a line drive kick, if he doesn't have the leg to get there. So it might be lower. Do you need to get that extra leverage, which I know how to spell now, used it several times this week, probably more times in my life this week. But that's the frustrating part as a fan, was what were you thinking right there? Why did we let it get to that point? And a call like that, did you really need to try to find an advantage of that? You had the advantage. The guy was kicking a 60-yard.
Absolutely. For me, it begs the question, Because of course we have replay in all major sports now, right? And in all of those major sports, replay does not apply universally, meaning there are things that are not reviewable. So meaning you could review a play, and they review more plays than not at this point. I mean, there's somebody sitting back in New York or LA who's watching every play and deciding whether or not something needs to have a closer look on it. They can look at that play in slow motion where they made this call and see, well, actually, we also should have made this call on the other team, and they can't change it. And
also known as the tush push, when you saw three guys
so
jump
that's
across
the other
line.
question for me is like, okay, so no, you can't leverage, but you can tush push.
Right.
To me, like that's a little weird, but I think that if you're gonna have replay, it should apply to everything. Period. There shouldn't be anything that is not reviewable. You should be able to say, like, and let's stick with football. Let's talk about like a pass interference late. I think there's probably some kind of hand fighting at the very least on just about every route that's run,
right,
in the game of football. So you could call it pass interference, you could call it defensive holding, depending on when the ball's thrown, all that. But I think that you should be able to go back, and you should, as a coach at least, you should be able to challenge that call and say.
I think it's so quick too. Maybe get the NFLPA involved or the NHLPA and get former players. Hey, that's another avenue. If you're not going to make it on air, come be a part of this 9-person group that you're going to sit in an office building, get to watch sports all day. When it calls, hey, you guys get 1 minute. I mean, what's a minute right now? They can run 2 ads on the side while still showing the field. Get some promotion out of it, maybe sell the replay a little bit more, as opposed to no, replay takes too much time. We're going to do what are they doing in football now? The automatic review or the yardage line. We're going to go up to automatic review here now. I mean, if you can really do it that quick, do a quick poll. These guys have a red and a blue button in their hand. Red for, hey, we need to reverse this. Blue for keep it as keep it the same, and let 9 former players sit in a booth and just decide. We did it for the BCS. Now we had a bunch of randos picking who was going to make the national championship game. Throw these guys in a room, send everything to Toronto, New York, wherever the headquarters are, and let them make decisions in real time with a group consensus. Hey, majority wins, and make it quick. But that also leads to, how many times do we see the Ed Hocules and the same guys refereeing these football? I'm seeing, Tyreek Hill take off down the line, and I'm watching this referee 20 yards behind haul in as fast as he can. More credit to him, but I'm like, is this our best talent pool where we have the same Angel Hernandez? We can't replace, like, the fact that I know these officials by name is a problem to me. I don't think we should know a single official name. They need to be rotated out. They need to be held accountable, but they also need the backbone of, hey, if I make a horrible call in a split-second decision that millions can see because of the slow-mo replay, man, there's something wrong there.
Well, I think, when you talk about like AI and sports, they can plug these percentages in, and let's go to like baseball, for example, and talking about like a home plate calling balls and strikes. And of course, we know that the automatic ball and strike potentially is coming soon, but you can simply plug into AI and have AI come up with what this person's percentage is based on what we define as the strike zone visually, and just say, this is the ranking of all of the umpires in Major League Baseball. And if your percentage is below this percentage, then effectively you're on probation, or you're rotated out, and you've got to work on stuff, or you've got to be forced into retirement, or whatever it is. I think we have the ability to do that stuff. And initially when it came to replay, I mean, let's think back to when they had slow-mo replay on TV, but they didn't use it for anything other than fan frustration. And you could have a play where it was like clearly one way, and the call goes the other way, and everybody's just like up in arms. And my question is, has that really changed by adding this much? By not going all the way with replay, has it really fixed it? Or has it just created new nuance that we now have to address? And I think that there's an argument to be made that that's the case, unless you just go all the way. You got to go all the way with it. Everything's reviewable. You know, maybe you insert some rules like, talking about sliding into second base, for example, the fact that you can keep the tag on somebody, and as he kind of pops over the base and loses contact for like a millisecond, then he can be out. I mean, that never would have been the call before, but now they can use replay for that. Like, I just, there's a lot that they've got to work on, and I think it's across all sports. And I think the way to fix it is to allow everything to be reviewable.
Yeah, set a time limit on it, set a standard operating procedure, review it, move on. Even watching the US Open this year, biggest thing that I noticed, and I candidly only watched the 4 majors for tennis, the 4 Grand Slams, didn't see any line umpires. And this was the first time I was like, whoa, there's no one standing and shouting out and, shedding their arm out because they hit the ball so gosh darn hard. The only way to do it is with the computer system that they have, and they pretty much do it for every point now. The Skyhawk system, and they're like in or out, and even shows the smush of the ball. I didn't know a tennis ball could elongate so much, but they hit the darn thing so hard that you can't see it in real time. That you have to use something like that technology. So, yeah, super interesting. I mean, even saw it on the forget what game it was, but it looked like he clearly crossed the line. They reviewed it, said there wasn't enough info, and I'm like, there's his forearm. The ball's in his forearm. It's across the line. I think it was Jalen Hurts. How could you not say that was in?
Well, and they have cameras that are, I mean, there are like 17 million angles for every single shot during a game. And somehow they create this feeling when we're watching it on TV where you seldom ever see the other cameras, right? Like, I mean, they do an incredible job with presentation on that.
Right.
And I mean, they've got cameras in the pylons. They're just everywhere. So to not be able to piece together from 2 angles, where was he when this? See, we can't see his knee here, but over here we can, and we can compare it to the. I mean, the computer can do that.
Right.
Right. The computer can can create a 3D model that probably would be accurate within like an 1/8 of an inch. Initially when this all started, I wasn't a huge fan of just the proliferation of instant replay and AI and computer stuff within sports. I liked the idea that a bad call could change a game just because it was the human element of the game. But I think they've gone too far, and they're sort of stuck in the middle, and they've got to go all the way or they've got to go all the way back. For me, that's it.
Definitely agree. Bring back the old uniforms too. I want the old chapeau and the bow ties. Bring some respect back to officials. I think we need more of that in this world. A little bit more respect.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble. Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, hey, Josh, with that in mind, would love to hear more of your thoughts on, I've seen a lot of memes, a lot of pictures on the interwebs about the potential of expansion in Major League Baseball. It's been quite some time since we had some expansion teams in the Diamondbacks, the Rockies, the Marlins, seeing a lot of division realignment questions. With that in mind, would love to hear thoughts for or against, and then a question in terms of what the expansion draft per se would look like. Would they lockdown players like you consistently see in the NHL, NBA? Would they be just building teams from farm systems? What have you heard? What do you know? And what do you consider thoughts on MLB expansion?
Good question. And it's interesting. It's topical right now, I think, too, because there has been a lot of discussion over the last couple of years of the MLB expanding and adding 2 more franchises. So I'll say this: I think it's going to happen. I think that one of the things that stands in the way of it right now is the problem that they have with the salary cap and all of the back and forth over that, which is clearly going to come to a head sooner rather than later. I think that makes it difficult to talk about something as big as an expansion. But I do think it's going to happen. What people don't understand, I think, and this is what's interesting, is when you compare Major League Baseball to pro football, pro basketball, pro hockey, pro soccer, it is a much more complex beast when you're talking about personnel, because you do have an entire farm system. That is not a thing in any of these other sports, right? Not in the United States anyway. And so you can't just, let's just say, Portland gets a team, they get approval for a team. People who are like, oh, we're gonna, maybe in the next couple of years we'll be able to go see a game. No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be years before you're actually going to see a major league game played by these new franchises. Because, going back to the fantasy, or not fantasy, the expansion draft, that expansion draft is only part of how these franchises are going to staff their club. And the way that expansion draft typically has worked is you've got every franchise can protect so many players from this draft. And then everybody else is potentially eligible to be drafted. And then they have this 2-team draft if there's 2 expansion teams, which I think there would be. And then there is some exchange also of compensation for these players that are being taken. Because, of course, there's an investment in these players. It's not just, even with like the Rule 5 draft, which happens every year, and you can lose these players, there is some kind of exchange. There is a competitive balance aspect when it comes to the amateur draft, for example. And so just the amount of nuance and how complicated this whole system is, there's that. And then you also know, okay, where do you get your farm teams? Do you steal them from other franchises? I mean, other franchises don't have a bunch of extra farm teams. So you're talking about expanding into new markets potentially with farm teams and creating entire new farm teams. Maybe there's, new stadiums that have to be built for that. Maybe you can acquire the Sioux City Explorers and make them your single A team or something like that, right? I mean, there's a lot of different options. There's a lot of teams out there that are pro or semi-pro that could, in theory, be brought into the fold or purchased that way. But you also then have to build that entire farm system up. So you're talking about multiple years of amateur drafts, of scouting, of signing international prospects on top of the expansion draft before you have a franchise that is ready to go and even play any games. And of course, those franchises are also going to be able to sign people in free agency and all that. But that's a whole process that, just by the nature of how things work, it has to take time. You can't build up a farm system in one off season. Can't be done.
So when you compare that to like the Golden Knights who win a cup, they are able to pick the best players from every club, build this great team that they deemed the misfits and came together and the rally flag and really built something up. When you say all this as a fan, do you even want an expansion team in Portland? It sounds exciting, but you're 5 years away. What could potentially happen in those 5 years as they're building this system? And is that kind of the hesitancy of how much money you need? And would this even make it to fruition, or would you be folding before getting anything off the ground? And then you have this half-built stadium sitting on a plot of land that has no use.
Right. Well, see, and I think that's part of the vetting process. And so just like with, like, say, the Olympics, right? Cities can bid to host the Olympics in the future, and then there's a whole vetting process. They have to have a whole package, basically a business proposal, if you will, at a very large scale, to win that, and that's years in advance, right? Because that's the other side of it. You've got to have a plan for a stadium. You've got to be prepared with funds for that stadium. And that in and of itself is a lot. You've got to be able to figure that out. So these cities that have been in talks kind of loosely about this whole thing, that's all already off and running. They're talking about the official bidding and vetting process beginning next year. And even with that, you're talking about 2031 to 2032 before any of these franchises are playing a major league game. So that process is so extended. You really do have to they have to believe that you are truly committed financially, to where, like, the only thing that's going to stop this from happening at this point is if the league folds, right?
Right.
You have to be all in. in order to win that bid. And so, but that's what's likely to happen. If that happens next year, you're talking right now, I think Portland and Salt Lake are the two in the West that have been kind of leading the way, I think. And then you're talking about like Montreal and Nashville as the leaders in the East. And then, of course, again, if you expand to 32 teams in Major League Baseball, you've probably got to move to a division model that is similar to the NFL.
Sure.
And that's, I mean, you just have to. So you're going to end up with 8 divisions instead of 6, and et cetera, et cetera. But I do think it's going to happen. It's farther into the future that it will actually happen than I think people realize.
Not letting you off the hook. You pro? Against?
I am pro, not just because Portland is one of the teams that might get a team, or one of the cities that might get a team. I think that having consistency with the size of a league is good. I think that having the opportunity for more parity, meaning you've got 2 more systems, 2 more entire franchises for people to be able to play in. There's a lot of money even in pro baseball. Even as pro baseball has lost some popularity. And I think that can be distributed more, and more players can get opportunities, and et cetera, et cetera. I just think, and expanding into new markets is good for the league and for the game in general. So I'm for it. And if Salt Lake or Las Vegas end up getting a franchise and Portland doesn't, I'm not going to root for them. I'm certainly not going to abandon my my fandom of Cleveland, but it would just be nice to be able to go to a game here in town, certainly. So,
Amazing.
So, my next question for you, Mr. Pacheco. Who wins the MLS Cup this year, and why?
Oh, man. First, great question. I think the MLS is one of those leagues where, first and foremost, this is not traditionally how a soccer league is won. Typically, you play home and away against everyone in the league, and 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 for a loss, and whatever the points add up to at the end is where you are in the tables. It's a very fundamentally un-American way of deciding a champion. So MLS came up with many different iterations of how the MLS Cup will be decided. Right now, how it's decided is a wild card round with the 9th and 8th seed, and then once those seeds are developed, it goes through kind of a similar of what I would liken it to in MLB, where there are one and done games, and then there are home and home adventures as well. So in that first round, you have the home and home. I believe in the next round, it's home and home again, and then you get to the one and dones. So those conference championships are one and done. The MLS Cup is a one and done. So I really liven it up to who is hot right now. And what we've seen all season long in the MLS is it's the new guys. It's the San Diego, it's Charlotte FC, it's the newer clubs that have been developed over the last few years, Philadelphia Union, that are really making names for themselves. And the exciting part, Josh, is the fan base. There's nothing that makes me happier than just seeing a full stadium with fans that are all chanting the same cheers, that are on the same page, that know when to cheer, when to clap, when to get the slow clap going on corner kicks. Like, that's exciting as a fan, no matter what you're watching. Even if you're not a soccer fan, when you're flipping through the channels and you see fans in unison clapping, flags flying, you kind of stop to figure out what's going on, as opposed to seeing a half empty stadium where you can hear the beer guy yelling, beer here, hot dogs 2 for $1 now, commonly heard at Rockies games right now, where the echo is going through the park. So it is amazing to see such a fan base from Charlotte, and just having that excitement for MLS Cup and getting that fever as we wind down towards the end of the season. You'd be hard pressed not to pick Charlotte. They're pretty much at the top of a lot of power rankings right now throughout the MLS, ESPN. A lot of the soccer feeds that I follow are just saying that Charlotte just seems to have that special magic this season. They went quite a few games. I believe they went 2-10 recently, and now they've reeled off 9 straight. So if they win their next matchup, they will take over the MLS record for most amount of wins outright. They just defeated Inter Miami and the power that is Suarez and Lionel Messi. So they're just on a hot streak, and everything that I've followed with them, not being in that market, is that they're doing it different ways. They're just nitty and gritty. They're not winning the corner kick battle. They're not winning the possession battle. They're just opportunistic in finding ways to put the biscuit in the basket. The tough thing is with the MLS is soccer is such a large pitch, such an interesting chess match of a sport that sometimes it's just not your day. I feel in MLS, and I don't have the statistics to back this up. Actually, just jogged my memory that I need to do that. Maybe we'll throw something up on the Facebook page. But MLS Cup history typically has the most upsets. You'll see a lot of 8 and 7 seeds, skirt by on a home and away battle where they get a 3-goal lead at home and they just park the bus and are able to escape with a series victory. I feel like Charlotte can win games multiple ways. They can park the bus, but they're also explosive and can get after it, and they know that they can win. And I think that's very important for an MLS squad. You also look at San Diego FC, and they're just, really seem to be hitting their tip of the, their top of their potential right now as well. So coming off of a loss against Minnesota, but they've been on the top of, looking at the supporter shield for finishing top of the table in terms of all of MLS, and then just really taking the Western Conference by storm. Have a lot of other teams that are just kind of filtering in the middle. You have Philadelphia Union, Minnesota United FC sitting in the middle. Seattle, just always a dangerous team, not a place that you want to have to go for a playoff matchup. Just really savvy, intelligent fan base that knows what's going on. FC Cincinnati, another new team. Orlando lurking, but so many teams get in the MLS playoffs that you want to kind of look at that bottom of the table too, as the end of the season looms, and see who has the most rest, who's been catching kind of a 2-3 game win streak, getting that firepower ready, because anything can happen in that MLS Cup. But really going to stick with my guns here. I know a lot of people and tops of the odds markets, Inter Miami, just because you can name a lot of names on that team. They have the pedigree of winning Leagues Cup. They just always seem to be right there, but even they were upset by the Sounders this year. So I'll keep my odds on favorite Charlotte FC, just having that right mix of getting things done, being a scrappy team, having a fan base that can really fire that team up, power them through the playoffs, and that's a team that you don't want to see.
Well, you heard it here first. We'll see when the time comes if you were right.
Excited,
I suspect that you have a pretty good shot.
So coming down the path here with MLS, want to kind of throw this back to something interesting that we've seen with NFL, a week 1 game in Brazil. I don't know if you've seen as well, Josh, when looking through some memes and all the different posts that come up, but AI predicting the next 50 Super Bowl champions and the next 50 Stanley Cup champions. And every now and again, you see in the 2030s there a London team or a Brazilian team that AI is saying is going to win, one of our major championships. Really want to hear your thoughts on making a team have that travel, whether it's early on in the season, late in the season, and then the potential of adding a London team in the future. And, I just come from a very amateur type status of, man, if I had to travel to London and they're making millions, what does that do to the person's body and time clock and recovery, and just the fan base having to give up a home game as well to go out to Brazil, and which team is giving up their home game to travel, what that means for the league, and just overall thoughts from a league perspective and a fan perspective?
Oh, good question. I, historically, I would say I haven't been a huge fan. But admittedly, the reason for that has been, I wake up Sunday morning and realize that somebody on my fantasy team has already started playing, and maybe I wanted to bench them, or maybe they got benched while I was asleep, and I didn't have the opportunity to update my roster. But that has been like one game, right? This year you're talking about, I think, 7. So they're playing in Sao Paulo, obviously they just did. Dublin, London. So 3 games in London, a game in Berlin, and a game in Madrid. And the reason for that is, and obviously globally, I mean, football, not North American football, is number 1. And I think that they're trying to create a more global footprint and a more global fan base for North American football. And so they see it as worthwhile to try to grow um, the league popularity wise. Obviously, in the United States, it's immensely popular. I would say in North America, it's very popular. But globally, it's, you can go to a lot of countries and people are like, how does that work? Um, Similarly to how many people have been historically in the United States with soccer. Except again, North American football is North American. So I think that I think it's worthwhile for them. I would say I'm indifferent to it. I think it's cool to think about like, oh, you could go to another country to watch your team play. The reality is that most people are not going to do that. But it gives the NFL and these franchises that many more opportunities to sell merchandise overseas and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot to it. And ultimately, I would say I defer to them and their judgment on whether or not it's a worthwhile thing. As far as the players are concerned, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think you can work it out so that, you look at some of the days of some of these games. Obviously, that first one was a Friday game. As long as you're not turning around and being expected to play like the following Thursday,
Sure.
I think it's okay. If you can, most of these games are Sundays. If you can work it out so that, you're not playing the following Sunday or certainly the following Thursday, then you should be able to adjust. These are grown-ups, and this trip, when you're talking about the charter jets that these guys are flying on, it's not like they're gone for like 17 days, right? It's not a journey by boat or by train to get to these international locations. So I just, especially like you're talking about, when they've played in like Mexico City, for example, I think from a lot of markets in the United States, it's like a 3 or 4 hour flight.
Sure.
That's
I come at it from, you look at the possibility of having an NFL team in London someday, which has been massively talked about in terms of what would their division look like to have New York teams, each of them flying out to London or wherever they decide to put it. I look at a lot of the talk of Seattle having to play Pittsburgh in the 11 a.m. time slot and going, oh, there's no way they're going to lose 3 hours of time zone sleep. Are they going on a Thursday? Are they going on a Friday? From a bettor's perspective, I like to look at those matchup each and every week to go who's going East Coast to West Coast and has the early slot. Yeah, I'm hammering that. It's just an interesting thing to think about the wear and tear over a long period of time. I believe it's Minnesota. I'm not sure if you have it up. They're gone back to back weeks, so they're kind of hanging out in the same time zone or way. Just interesting to think about just player health overall. And I've always thought that with baseball season, like, I don't know if I could ever be a baseball player. Every 3 days living out of a suitcase, going to a new town, and I guess you just adjust and get used to it.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about people whose entire profession is about being ready to play a sport from a physical standpoint, it's a little bit different than it would be for us. I was talking with my slow pitch softball crew last night about how, at age 41, I no longer have the ability to play in a tournament on the weekend and then play league 2 or 3 nights a week. Like,
Right.
I don't have that ability to do like 6 to 10 games a week.
Right.
And could I get there if I really worked at it? Maybe, but who has that time? But these guys, that's all they do, right? That's their life. And so, especially while they're in season, and then look at college football right now with the way that the conferences are set up, where you've got Cal playing in the ACC and so many of the teams that you're playing that are in your conference, it's a cross country trip.
Right.
And so that has just become just much more of a thing. And California to New York is nothing to slouch, or it's no slouch of a trip, right? That's a big trip.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about college kids having to make that trip while being students, and all of the infrastructure that comes with that. I just think, it's a lot of it, I think, is to satisfy the fans and to make more money. And you can talk all day about whether or not that's a good thing. I think we have to be okay with it. As far as expansion of the NFL officially into some of these overseas markets, I think we're a ways away from that actually happening, because when you're talking about the investment that you've got to make in order to do that, you're not going to do that unless you feel like, the pot is ready for the pasta, if you will. You got to wait until you've built up enough of a following and feel like you're going to be able to fill that stadium. And yes, it's true that like when it's new, the novelty of it might give you a boost initially, but that's not going to last forever. So you just have to be there already, I think, where it's not going to take much work to get those people to come to those games and be able to make money. You can't be like in the red for your first 5 years as a franchise. And I think that's what you're looking at if you tried to go into one of these markets with an actual franchise today, especially when you're talking about the travel, because then it's like, did you add one international team that is now has to be, brought into the league where every other team is in the continental United States? How hard is that logistically? And so then you're talking about, well, do we need to add kind of a team in every major region of the world before we can make that work? And then it's like, is there a division that's just an international division? I mean, remember when they had NFL Europe, right? That was, kind of like a minor league level of professional football. And they've tried to get this off the ground. And I just think it's such a big undertaking. I don't know. Certainly, it's not going to be for a while, and I don't know that it ever happens. Honestly, I really don't. But
I think if you're truly going to be a world champion, you got to have the world invited.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. And obviously, when you're talking about North American sports leagues, we all consider, I would say, with the exception of soccer, when you win a championship in your North American sports league, you're considered the world champion. That's just maybe an American exceptionalism, but I don't know. I think when it comes to professional football, I think they're a long way away from building that up enough. But
if you enjoyed this
clearly,
video, don't forget to like,
7 games
share,
overseas,
and subscribe.
This year, they really are giving it a go, and they're really taking it seriously. So we'll see. Anything's possible.
Amazing. I will be adding is the pot ready for the pasta to one of my kits this week.
I came up with that just
now.
Hey,
that was not. Hey, the t-shirt's already being printed. It's gonna happen.
The pot ready for the pasta? Maybe it's because we had pasta for dinner last night. I don't know.
That's great.
So as we transition into our final question for the program today, I think we've managed to keep it pretty topical and transition pretty well with these questions. So I need you, Alex, to give me, we haven't talked really about college football. I need you to give me 5 teams as we approach, week 4 here. 5 teams that are guaranteed to make the college football playoff this year.
Oh, guaranteed locks this early in the season. I've already seen a couple of upsets. So we've got Notre Dame and Clemson, both 0-2. Notre Dame, the first, I believe, 0-2 football team to be ranked in the top 25, just making it into, I believe, the number 25 and number 24 spots. They're not going to be making the playoff this year. Really seems to be top heavy, though. Not a lot of upsets, not a lot of close ones. The upsets that have happened this season so far have you can rationalize between them and how they came to be. But really the big teams that you see with the first round buys and making the playoffs right off the bat, I'm going to give you 4 guaranteers, and then I'm going to give you a 5th one that I'm feeling really good about, and a team that came in unranked that is making a heck of a name for themselves coming in. So you've got Ohio State from the Big Ten. One of those, they are who we thought they were teams. Really just going to steamroll their way through the Big Big Ten. I don't see anyone really putting up a fight besides Michigan, who is always just a thorn in their side for whatever reason. They could be the worst team in the Big Ten and still keep it within 7. Just those rivalry matchups. Ohio State's just going to be a real tough team to hang with all year long. Miami bouncing back to where we all assume they would be. Losing Cam Ward has not turned into a big misstep for them. Really see them coming out of the ACC, being the champ. Just not seeing a big push from Clemson starting 0-2, and they just got a pretty seamless path to the playoffs that I can tell, and looking at what's the current landscape is. Georgia, what a theft job going into Tennessee this past weekend and stealing a game that really Tennessee could have had locked away at multiple different times. Tennessee is going to rue that loss. It won't push them out of playoff contention, but is definitely making them reassess where they stand in college football. And they had Georgia at home on the ropes and still couldn't put them away. Haven't beaten them since 2015. So Georgia is just continuing to put up the fight, whether they're home or in a very tough environment in Tennessee, which they just own Tennessee at this point. LSU, man, they look good. Just a team that continues to turn out wins. I feel like Death Valley is just a brutal place to have to go into and try and win a football game. They have a lot of returners, some names that you've heard over the last several years, given COVID years, and just they have a lot of tenure on that team, a lot of players that have been through the gauntlet and have fought a lot of tough battles. So really see them as a lock. And then Florida State, my goodness, this team that just is the Phoenix coming out of the fire. Just a horrendous season last year. Couldn't get off the ground, couldn't get anything going. Was a top 10 team, and then obviously unranked, losing record. Just had a tumultuous season and couldn't get themselves over their feet to really get anything going. They're having a heck of a start this year. So they win a ranked matchup, take care of Alabama, really have put themselves in a nice spot to have a quarterfinal matchup and have a potential run through the CFP playoffs. So that's really my sneak pick, is that Florida State. Keep an eye on them this season. They have a lot to prove, and they're playing with that chip on their shoulder.
So just to sum up, 5 teams are...
We've got Ohio State, Miami, Georgia, LSU, and I'm throwing Florida State as a lock into the CFP playoffs.
That's fair. I would say, for me, the easy way to look at this is, the 2 best conferences are the SEC and the Big Ten. So who are the 2 best teams in those 2 conferences? And for me, For me, it's not. Penn State is not the number 2 team in the Big Ten, in my opinion. I think Ohio State and Oregon are more likely to be the top 2 finishers in that league. Oregon has had some, kind of little, less than impressive here and there, but I just think they're powerful. Oof, they are scary. And Ohio State, I think the question mark is not overall talent level, because they're loaded with 5-star blue chip prospect type guys, but is Julian saying, is he good enough to have them be the top team all year? I don't know. He might be, but I think they've got a lot of questions to answer. And as you said, no matter how good or bad Michigan is, and I think Michigan is worse than people think,
Sure.
They probably are still going to find a way in that last game to get them. You never know, but. So for me, I would say you take the top 2 teams out of the SEC, the top 2 teams out of the Big Ten, and I think top 2 teams in the SEC is LSU and Georgia, no question. Alabama is not bad by any means. I think they're better than they were last year, but they're clearly. And that's my issue with Florida State, is how good is that win actually? Was Alabama unprepared in that early matchup? Is Florida State really better than Alabama even? And is Alabama that good? I mean, it was a decisive victory, obviously, in that game, but I don't know that I'm a believer in Florida State yet, given what I know they had going on last year. But I also know Nebraska lost their defensive coordinator, lost a couple transfer defensive linemen to Florida State, and their defenses played pretty well. So I know what they have on the defensive side, and certainly they've got some potential there.
And that's why we love college football. Any given Saturday, we really
man. Any given Saturday, man. Any given Saturday.
I'm convinced that Florida State's going to play with that chip and continue to prove doubters wrong. But man, you just love to see a good upset. Anytime you see one of those underdogs with the lead with 5 minutes to go, you're flipping to that channel and typically rooting for the underdog unless it's against your team.
Yeah. So I would differ only a little bit. I would say Oregon, Miami, LSU, Georgia, Ohio State. But the dark horse team for me is Georgia Tech. They're on the move. I don't know how really tested they've truly been to this point, but they look like they've got some guys that can really get it done, especially in their quarterback and their primary running back. We'll see. But yeah, it's early. We're about to get into the conference slate this week, and that's always exciting. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah,
definitely looking forward to this weekend and seeing what these teams are really made of.
So with that, we are going to close up the episode 1 of season 2 of You're Blocking the TV. We will be breaking each of these segments, each of these questions out into its own separate video for YouTube. And we have officially gotten onto Spotify now. So there will be an audio only or, an in the car option for people to be able to listen to this program on the go, which I think is huge. I'm super excited about that. And we are going to give a shot at least at trying to make this a weekly program. So perhaps we will see you in a week, if not certainly in 2 weeks. And we will make the official announcement in the next couple days on the Facebook page. If you're not following it yet, You're Blocking the TV on Facebook. You're Blocking the TV on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, tell everybody at the water cooler about us. Do whatever you can. We just need to get the word out about our fun little program here. But anyway, that said, we are going to wrap it up and enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy this weekend of college football and NFL. And if you're a Major League Baseball fan, good luck to your team, unless it's the Yankees or Dodgers. And with that, we'll see you later.
And don't block the TV.
Don't block it.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like